and welcome to this episode of the Joyful Friar podcast. I'm your host, Father Nathan Castle. Today, we're going to be starting into a trilogy. You might know from previous podcasts that sometimes we tell a story that's in one of my books. You can see the first one over there on the side. We tell a story of one of our crossings, and then we follow it with two other episodes, one of them compassionate response to that story, and then a spiritual practice that might flow from that story. Today, it's just telling a story, which is fun to do and easy. And as I work with these people, with my prayer partners, a bond forms, we become friends. So I feel like I'm telling the story of Abraham and his family. I've invited him and them to be with me this morning in spirit. I've said my prayers earlier. We always invite St. Michael the Archangel, who's common to Christianity and Judaism and Islam. He shows up in all three of the Abrahamic faiths. Holy Mary, she, of course, was Jewish, and she shows up in the Quran and in the Christian scriptures, of course, and then a bunch of others. I'm always alone in the room right now from all appearances, but the place is full of saints and angels because I've invited them to be here, and they always come when they're invited. They're sweet that way. The story that we're going to be telling today, it started back for me in 2019, so the year before the pandemic began. I had a dream, received a dream is the way I really more appropriately describe that. But it was very brief. It was really nothing but kind of a snapshot. It looked like this African family of a husband, wife, and what appeared to be about a 12-year-old daughter, as though they were posing for a photo, but moving. They were looking into a camera from the way I perceived it, and the man just waved at me and smiled. And I woke up. It had no narrative. There were many times these dreams for me involve driving a car and seeing someone cross the center line and just about to hit me head on, or other stuff where they show me how they died without it being gory, but giving me the data that I need to at least know what's going on. Well, this one had none of that. It was just what I described. Nothing but a family of three, as though posed for a photo, waving at me. I woke up and I thought, well, I think that's a contact dream. I don't know these people, and it doesn't have any pertinence to my own psychobabble. So I prayed to them and said, introduced myself and said, this is what I just received. I wrote it in my dream journal, and I said, when I can, I'm going to get with a prayer partner, and we'll be back in touch with you in prayer and see what I can do to help. Well, it happened that I was about to go to the IANDS conference, IANDS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. That year, it was being held in Metro Philadelphia. I was relatively new to the organization and went through their application process to propose to be a speaker at the conference. Because I was new to them, I was maybe auditioned or tried out. They put me on a panel with two other presenters and gave each of us 15 minutes. Actually, it was 13. So the idea is there's people at this conference who have many, many options of breakout sessions. We would be given an hour, and we were on a panel and grouped together. Each of us had 13 minutes to describe what it is that we experience or do. Then there would be about 15 minutes of question and answer, and we're done. The topics that were grouped together didn't necessarily need to be very similar. It was just kind of a potpourri. I thought that I would simply tell a story and give people a general idea of what I do. So it really had the feeling of an infomercial. And it's not a very easy set of experiences to describe in detail when you have 13 minutes. But anyway, I did my part, and I explained the basic process of receiving a dream, writing it down, going into prayer, protective prayer, which is very important to me, not doing this work without the protection of the saints and angels, being able to allow my voice to be borrowed so that the person or persons can speak through to a prayer partner or prayer partners, that they've been vetted, We never have to persuade or arm twist. The people that come to me are all ready to move into a next afterlife plane that has less therapeutic surroundings. They've healed to a point after their traumatic death, because I only get ones that had some kind of trauma. They've healed through their trauma, and they're now ready to kind of sanely and rationally choose what they want to do next. But they need to move from place to place, plane to plane, however you think of it. And that's what we help do. We often, early on especially, would ask a person when the time was right near the end, can you think of anybody who died before you did, who loved you, that you would be happy to see show up to take you to the next place? You're going to be going somewhere you haven't been before, so you need a guide, at least temporarily. So I explained that in this panel, and there were two other groups of panelists. One of them was Michael Quinn. He was there without his wife, Linda. He's retired. She continues to work. Their child is grown and they're now grandparents, but they've spent a lot of time doing hospice volunteering, and Michael has done some writing in that area. So anyway, I hadn't met him before either. I listened to what he did in his 13 minutes. And when the whole thing was over, we were gathering up our things and leaving a conference room, and it was lunchtime. So Michael and I were talking, and I just said, well, would you like to have lunch together? So we did that. And over lunch, the conversation kept coming back to what I do. And when we were concluding our lunch, I just said, what, you seem interested enough. Would you like to be part of one of the sessions? Would you be willing to be a prayer partner for one of these people? And he said, yes, absolutely. So we headed for the elevators, went up to my hotel room, said our prayers. We did two sessions actually, but the one that I'm going to share here today is especially lovely. It's going to be told in my next book. The cover that's right to my side there with the colored hands reaching up and down, Afterlife Interrupted, that one was my first book. There's a second one in that series, and the third one is in the works, and this story is going to be in it. So here's the story. It was 2019. I'm asleep, and I had this dream that I told you. It was just people, this African family of three waving at me, and the man smiling. Well, when we got into prayer, very often the first thing I do is ask for a person's guardian angel to give us some detail. Even in a detailed dream, a dream is still a dream, and there's an indistinctiveness about dreamscapes. The genre of dreaming often uses symbology, and sometimes you just want clarity. And so we very often will ask for their guardian angel to come first and say, here's what we got. Can you fill out the picture a little better to help us do what we're going to do today? That's our method, and it works all the time. Well, this time when we said our protective prayer, and I got still, and I do a little breathing, and I try to open myself to receive the person who the guardian. Usually, instead of a guardian angel this time, it was a saint. In the Catholic schema of things, we distinguish an angel is a different kind of person in the order of complexity of the whole panoply of things that God has created. An angel has not previously been human. They're of a different order, but they're personal. They're not material, but they're delightful. The ones that we deal with are at the service of God and all that's good. They're full of love, and they only tell the truth. I've dealt with them since childhood, so it feels like second nature to me. Anyway, instead of an angel, which we usually get, we got a saint. This man was named Charles Lwanga. He died in 1885, I think, in Uganda. He was a Christian, and he and a group of other Christians ran afoul of a king or a leader who wanted them to do things they chose not to do and threatened them with death, and they were martyred. Right. So he's on the calendar. His name is Charles Lwanga, and in the Catholic schema of things, there's a feast day on the calendar that's St. Charles Lwanga and Companion. So I didn't know him very well, but his feast rolls around every year, so I was at least a little familiar with him when he showed up. Well, he introduced himself and said that this family was from Rwanda, which is very near Uganda, He said he has a love for the people of his continent, and he was asked if he would be a participant in the process that we were going to do today. So he was invited and showed up to assist us. He explained that these people had died in the Rwandan genocide that occurred in 1994. That it was just horrific, I guess, as any genocide would be. But people of different tribes who had lived together peacefully for years, there was suddenly some political tumult that made people default back to their tribal categories. And not only that, but to feel like they needed to oppose one another violently. So people in a neighborhood who had lived together peacefully suddenly were killing each other. This family that came in the dream, they were Roman Catholic, and they were suddenly in grave danger. Abraham, the man, explained that he was a church leader. He was a catechist. He'd been through some training, and he often taught children and explained the faith to others. So he had leadership skills and background. He was very well known in his church. They ran there as a family and hid. They were in hiding, hoping that, of course, they would be kept safe. And he explained later that in the picture, he wasn't so much looking at a camera as they were imagining looking out a window or peering out of a hiding place, hoping that the people who would see them would be their rescuers. As it turned out for them, that was not the case. The people who found them, even hate to say it, hacked them to death with machetes. So it was absolutely horrific. He explained that that's the reason why in the dream, all he did was look out through a window and smile to indicate that I was safe in their company. Everybody survives their death, and it doesn't matter how your death happened. And Abraham and his family, his wife and daughter, survived their deaths. But in the afterlife, their trauma had made it necessary for them to have some sort of a process of calming down, being able to regroup a bit before they went on to what we might think of as the joys of heaven. That makes perfect sense to me, and I've experienced it in so many ways over the years. So we were brought into their story. Well, St. Charles his part was really to just clarify a bit and to be companion. He slid to the side as the angels often do and say, I'm not leaving, but I think I've done my part. I'm going to be right here praying along with you. And this gentleman is going to speak and explain things. So the next person to come on the line through my voice was Abraham, the father. He explained some of what I just told you, that they did the best they could to get to safety. He explained that the process that they were in, that Michael and I were helping with, we wanted to know, is this just you that we're helping, the three of you, or are there others, because you died in an event that involves so many people? He said, we're concerned with us today, but we're told that others will be watching, and maybe what we do will inspire others to do their own crossing. He chose to tell us about his faith and the fact that he was several generations Catholic and was proud of that. Christian Catholic message came to his country primarily through Belgian missionaries. And that when they came, they brought what they knew and what they had. They explained the faith, but all the pictures that they had of Jesus or any of the saints looked Belgian. And somewhere along the line, he learned from somebody that as the faith puts down roots in Rwanda, that their own artists would have to do their own depictions. Jesus, Mary, Joseph, and all the others would not have looked Belgian. They would have looked Palestinian. They would have been much more brown than more white Belgian skin. Anyway, he then showed us that they were doing that they were trying to help children draw closer to Jesus and Mary and the other Christian saints. And one of the ways they were doing that was by helping these school children create their own Madonna and Child dolls. He explained, and he really kind of showed me, it was pictorial. He showed me corn husks and said that corn was not native to Africa, but it grew there like crazy, and that they were never ones to throw much of anything away. They would save everything and turn it into something else. So he said, we took the husks of the corn, dried it, and flattened it by putting it under rocks or something heavy, and turn it into what we might call construction paper, some media that children could use to play with, to make things from. He said that also when clothing became rags, and then even when the rags were beginning to be useless, that wouldn't be thrown away either. They would take cloth and put it in a dye bath of black dye. That would then become the media of faces and hands and limbs of African-looking dolls. So he showed me a classroom where children were busy at work making Madonna and Child. You've seen those pictures, haven't you, of Mary and baby Jesus she's holding. So they were making little dolls like that out of these corn husks and this black dyed cloth. In the course of continuing to describe the way that they never wasted anything, somehow he started talking about heavy burlap sacks. Maybe there's other material now than burlap, but it used to be, and when I was a child, that things that got shipped in bulk, seeds, beans, I don't know, fertilizer, anything that might fit in a bag, the bag needed to be sturdy or it'd fall apart in transit. But then once you were finished with it, it was something that you could turn into something else or save it to store something. He was describing these bags that were very heavy duty. He said we would poke holes in one end of it and run a cord through it like a rope or string and create a handle. And then you could drag it along the ground and an older child could drag a younger one, or the adults could drag the children. And it would be fun. It would be a little game. And it also was transport. It could get people from one place to the next. So he was describing that. And somewhere along the line, Our Lady shows up, Mary, Mother of Jesus. I can feel her presence now. She's as sweet as can be. She's shown up for us before. Michael was new at this, but he's very adventurous and funny and engaging, and he wanted to chat right away. That's Michael's style. And she explained that I'm known for all kind of things. I'm Queen of Angels and Queen of the Universe, and I think I'm Our Lady of the Lakeside and the Mountain and so on. She said, but of all the titles that I have, I'd like to be known today as Our Lady of Rwanda. She said, these people live very much the way that I actually did when I was upon the earth in the lifetime of Joseph and Jesus. And she said, we live very much like them. We never threw anything away. We never had much to begin with, and we always turned what we had into some other use. So she just had a very soft place in her heart, in a heart that's already full of love for everybody. But she said she just had a particular love for these people and for what they'd been through and wanted to help. So she showed up as Our Lady of Rwanda because Abraham had been trying to teach children about her love for them. When it came time for them to cross, we didn't have to ask, who would you like to have come for you? They already had Charles Lwanga to begin with, and then Mary, Our Lady of Rwanda. So when it came time to cross, she just, she brought with her one of these sacks with a handle. And I remember Abraham saying, she must be quite strong because she's ready to pull all three of us over. So we're going to go for a ride like we're children, and she's our mother, and she's going to pull us into the next place that would be best for us. I'm not making this stuff up. It's just the way that it played out. So Mary, Our Lady of Rwanda, brought this terrified family from the place where they had begun to heal into a next level. There's more to that story, because we don't tell these stories until we go back to them a second time in prayer and ask permission. These stories are personal, which might mean private. They don't have to be, but don't you think it's just polite? So I always do that. And we did go back and we have another narrative from that. I'm not going to talk about that here, but I'll talk about that in the next two podcasts that are on this topic. We are 1 week out from going to an IANDS conference. By the time this podcast is made available to you to view and listen to, that'll already have happened. But for me, it's coming up within a week. And Michael and his wife, Linda, are going to be there. And we're going to do a kind of a dramatic reading of this story and introduce it to people, in a breakout session at a large conference. But then this will also be in the third book in the Afterlife Interrupted series that I will have out this fall, the fall of 2023. For now, that's the basics of this story. Again, if you're interested, pay attention, and in upcoming weeks, we'll have follow-up sessions that pertain to this story of Abraham and his family, St. Charles, and Our Lady of Rwanda. That's it for now. I'm grateful for your interest, and know that even if we haven't met, there's a corner of my prayer life where I pray for anybody that pays attention to these sessions on the podcast. And I trust that I hope at least that you can receive the blessing that I'm sending your way. So for now, this is Father Nathan Castle. Thank you for being a part of this episode of the Joyful Friar podcast. God bless you. Bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Joyful Friar. You can visit me at nathan-castle.com. Send me a message by clicking the contact button. If you'd like to support this podcast, you can make a donation by clicking the donate button. See you next time. God bless.